Hello, I'm so glad you've chosen to join me today. Today we're going to be looking at the Transfiguration of Jesus and something that happens shortly after the Transfiguration. And you may be wondering, what does Transfiguration mean? Put in simple terms, this means the way Jesus looked changed for a short time. There were only 3 of the 12 disciples who had the privilege to see this change. However, this provided those 3 with an even greater proof that Jesus was indeed the Son of God, since for a moment they saw him in a more glorious and majestic form. Peter later said in 2 Peter 1:16, "We did not follow cleverly devised stories when we told you about the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ in power, but we were eyewitnesses of his majesty," referring to the time when he, James, and John actually saw Jesus change and his majesty shone for them. What a great privilege for these 3 men. How awesome it must have been to see this happen in person and thus know for sure that he is the Son of God. Let's take a look at what happened with the Transfiguration. Mark chapter 9, starting in verse 2. "And after 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became radiant, intensely white, as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah and Moses, and they were talking with Jesus. And Peter said to Jesus, 'Rabbi, it is good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, and one for Moses, and one for Elijah.' For he did not know what to say, for they were terrified. And a cloud overshadowed them, and a voice came out of the cloud, 'This is my beloved Son. Listen to him.' And suddenly, looking around, they no longer saw anyone with them, but Jesus only. And as they were coming down the mountain, he charged them to tell no one what they had seen until the Son of Man had risen from the dead." At the Transfiguration, Jesus' clothes became whiter than any person could bleach them. Matthew says his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. Could you imagine seeing someone change from normal to shining bright as a light? How awesome would that be? Wouldn't that let you know there was something special about that person? It was indeed proof for these 3 men that Jesus really was God's Son. At the same time, Moses and Elijah appeared with Jesus. 2 people who had been dead for hundreds of years were there talking with Jesus. How amazing would that be to witness? These 2 men were major people in the Jewish faith, so the disciples must have been excited to see them there. God spoke up and declared that Jesus was indeed his Son and told the disciples to listen to him. Imagine hearing a voice booming from the sky and you know it is the voice of God. How awesome would that be? Then Moses and Elijah vanished and Jesus' look returned to his normal look. Now Peter wanted to build a memorial for this event so everyone who passed by would know something special happened there. If this happened today, we might have wanted to videotape the event and post it on YouTube, or take a picture and put it on the internet for all to see. This was the most the disciples could do to show this event off to the world, since they did not have cameras back then. Jesus tells them not to tell anyone what happened there until after the resurrection, let alone making a monument to this. Because this event was not about showing Jesus to the world, but rather this event was about strengthening the faith of these disciples before Jesus went to die on the cross. An application for us is that we don't need to show off great events or brag about them. Don't let pride tell you otherwise. Just be happy to be a part of what happened, and if needs be, keep it to yourself unless it has a good purpose to be shared. Later, it was important for the disciples to share the Transfiguration, but right now was not the time for that. Now let's skip ahead to Mark 9, verses 33 through 37. "And they came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he asked them, 'What were you discussing on the way?' But they kept silent, for on the way they had argued with one another about who was the greatest. And he sat down and called the 12, and he said to them, 'If anyone would be first, he must be last of all and servant of all.' And he took a child and put him in the midst of them, and taking him in his arms, he said to them, 'Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me. Whoever receives me receives not me, but him who sent me.'" Jesus asked what they were arguing about, and they got very quiet and embarrassed to say, because they've been arguing about who was the greatest. Have you ever been asked by someone what you were doing or why you were doing something, and you really didn't want to say because you knew the answer wasn't good? Well, this is where the disciples found themselves. No one wanted to admit the petty argument they were having to the only truly great one. Then Jesus laid a truth bomb on them. The way to be first, that is, the way to be number one, is by being last and by being servant of all. Doesn't seem to make sense. Jesus is saying here that in order to truly be great, we need to put others first instead of trying to lift ourselves up as great. Do you seek to be first in line, or are you content with letting others go first? Do you look for others to do things for you, or do you look for ways that you can help others? The key to being great is humility and service. Don't seek attention and praise for what you have done. Don't ask what others can do for you, but ask what you can do for others. Accepting help when you need it can also be a part of humility because it shows you realize you can't do everything on your own. James 4:10 instructs us to humble ourselves in the sight of the Lord, and He will lift you up. So don't brag, don't boast, and don't act like you are more important than others. Humility also is not thinking less of ourselves than we ought to think, but it's being okay with others not knowing how good we are, as well as not thinking higher of ourselves than we ought to think. Humility is also thinking of others as more important than yourself and lifting them up and encouraging them rather than bragging about yourself. So who is the greatest? The greatest is the one who does not care about being seen as great. The greatest is the one who helps others feel great. The greatest is the one who helps others in need without looking for recognition. The greatest is the one who puts others first. The greatest is the one who does not brag or point out how good they are, nor point out what they have done. The greatest is the one who is content with being in the background and not being noticed. The greatest is a humble servant who just wants to serve God by serving other people and showing His love to the world. So I'd like to encourage you to ask yourself, what is one way that I can be great this week? That is to ask, how can I serve someone else or lift someone else up or put someone else first? And then seek an opportunity to be great by serving others. As always, I hope you've gotten something from today's video. Check out these other videos and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Hope you have a great week and God bless you.